The longer a man is single, the more he strengthens his independence. At first, being alone may feel uncomfortable for some men because society often conditions men to believe that they need to constantly be in pursuit of a relationship in order to feel complete. But masculine men quickly realize that solitude is not a weakness, it is training ground. It is in the quiet of singlehood that a man learns how to rely on himself fully without leaning on anyone else for validation, support, or identity. He learns to stand firm in his own presence, and that independence becomes one of his greatest assets. When a man is single long enough, he begins to master the art of self reliance. He realizes that his happiness is not dependent on someone else being there to provide it. He builds his own routines, his own structure, his own sense of stability. He becomes the provider of his own peace. And this independence creates strength because when a man knows he can stand on his own, he is no longer afraid of being abandoned or rejected. He does not cling to relationships out of fear of being alone because he has already discovered the power in being alone. That is what makes his presence so different. He chooses relationships, but he never depends on them. Independence also sharpens a man's discipline. With no one else to lean on or blame, he becomes responsible for his own growth. He learns to cook for himself, to manage his money, to handle his emotions, to plan his life with intention. These things may seem simple, but they are the foundation of masculine strength. Because when a man can take care of himself completely, he enters relationships from a place of power, not need. He does not need someone to complete him. He is already whole. That wholeness makes him a far better leader, partner, and protector because his presence comes from choice, not desperation. The longer a man is single, the more he discovers that independence is freedom. He can focus on his mission without distraction. He can build his body, his finances, his mind, and his spirit with clarity. He can make decisions based solely on what is best for his path without compromise. This freedom allows him to elevate himself faster than men who are constantly dependent on someone else's approval. And with each level of growth he reaches alone, his self respect deepens because he knows he earned it through his own strength. And something else happens too. Independence makes him magnetic. People can sense when a man is whole within himself. They can feel when he does not need them to validate his existence. That independence makes him far more attractive than chasing ever could because it communicates silently that he is strong, that he's focused, and that he cannot be easily swayed. Masculine men know this. True attraction comes not from proving your worth to others, but from living in such a way that your worth speaks for itself. So while some may see long term singleness as a disadvantage, masculine men see it as a season of power. They use it to sharpen their independence, to build their foundation, and to strengthen their self reliance. And when they do step into relationships, they enter not as men who need to be carried, but as men who can stand firmly on their own. The longer a man is single, the stronger his independence becomes, and that independence ensures he never fears walking away when respect is no longer present. The longer a man is single, the more he builds his purpose. When there are no distractions, no constant need to prove himself to someone, and no pressure to chase, a man can finally devote his full energy toward what truly matters, his mission. Masculine men understand that purpose is the anchor of their identity. It is the compass that keeps them moving forward even when everything else around them shifts. And singlehood gives them the perfect opportunity to sharpen that compass without compromise. When a man is single, he has time to think clearly about who he is and what he wants to accomplish in life. He does not dilute his energy by trying to meet someone else's expectations, nor does he lose himself in the endless back and forth of chasing validation. Instead, he redirects that energy inward and forward. He sets goals. He defines a vision. He builds habits that strengthen his body, his mind, and his discipline. In the process, he forges himself into someone far stronger than he ever could have become while distracted by relationships that lacked alignment. This focus on purpose is what separates men who drift from men who lead. The man who drifts is easily swayed by whoever enters his life. He adjusts his goals to please others, abandons his mission to secure attention, and constantly shifts direction to avoid being alone. But the man who embraces singlehood to build his purpose becomes unshakable. He knows exactly what he is working toward, and that certainty makes him magnetic. He does not need to chase because his direction pulls people toward him. Others sense his determination and are drawn to it because purpose is rare and powerful. The beauty of purpose is that it multiplies over time. A man who spends years focused on his mission will have more to show for it than a man who spent those same years chasing fleeting connections. His career, his health, his finances, his wisdom, all of these sharpen with time invested in purpose. And as he grows, so does his self-respect. He learns to value himself not for who he can impress, but for what he can build. But internal respect is what makes him unwilling to settle. He doesn't need to grab at whatever attention comes his way because he knows his mission already gives him fulfillment. The longer he walks alone, the clearer he becomes about what aligns with his direction. Purpose filters out distractions. If someone enters his life but does not respect his mission, he doesn't hesitate to disappear. If someone demands that he abandon his goals in order to chase them, he simply continues walking his path. His purpose protects him from being manipulated by temporary desires because he knows what is at stake. Masculine men are not willing to lose years of progress just to feel validated for a moment. And there is something magnetic about a man who is deeply rooted in his mission. He doesn't need to brag about it. His energy shows it. He moves with conviction, he makes decisions with clarity, and he refuses to compromise on what matters most. That presence alone draws respect, and it draws admiration without him ever having to chase. Purpose makes him powerful, and that power naturally attracts the right people into his life. This is why the longer a man is single, the more unstoppable he becomes. Singlehood gives him the gift of focus, the chance to pour himself fully into his mission, and the discipline to protect it. While others waste energy chasing, he is building, and what he builds becomes the foundation of his strength. The longer he is single, the more he builds his purpose. And that purpose makes him impossible to ignore. The longer a man is single, the more he defines his standards. At first, he may not even realize it is happening, but time alone gives him clarity. Without the noise of constant relationships, without the influence of someone else's expectations, he begins to see what he truly values. He learns what gives him peace and what steals it, what aligns with his direction and what distracts from it. Singlehood becomes a mirror showing him his own patterns and teaching him what he will never accept again. Each experience, each lesson sharpens his vision of the kind of life he wants and the kind of people he will allow into it. When a man rushes into relationships out of fear of being alone, he often compromises too quickly. He accepts less than he deserves, overlooks red flags, and lowers his standards just to avoid solitude. But masculine men who embrace singlehood discover that solitude is not punishment, it is power. And in that power, their patience grows. They no longer need to grab at whatever is available because they have learned that waiting is better than settling. Standards are born in patience. The longer a man is single, the more disciplined he becomes in protecting those standards because he has experienced firsthand the cost of compromising them. Defining standards is not just about knowing what kind of partner he wants, it's also about knowing what kind of man he refuses to stop becoming. A masculine man sets standards for himself first. How he lives, how he works, how he treats himself. He refuses to tolerate laziness in his own life, refuses to let go of his purpose, refuses to lose his respect for himself. Those self-standards then shape the standards he sets for others. He knows he cannot demand what he does not embody, so the longer he walks alone, the more he builds himself into someone whose standards are reflected in his lifestyle. And this is where strength shows itself. A man with no standards is easily swayed. He clings to whoever shows him attention no matter the cost. He chases what looks good in the moment, even if it destroys him in the long run. But a man with standards cannot be manipulated. He does not flinch when someone withdraws their attention. He does not break when he is tested. Instead, he stands firm in his values, knowing that if someone does not align, he is willing to walk away without hesitation. That willingness to walk away is one of the clearest signs of high standards. Over time, these standards become like armor. They protect him from distractions, from toxic relationships, from energy that does not serve him. He knows what peace feels like, and he refuses to let it be disturbed. He knows what respect feels like, and he refuses to settle for less. He knows what genuine attraction feels like, and he refuses to chase anything that doesn't flow naturally. The longer he is single, the sharper his discernment becomes because he has trained himself to notice quickly what does and does not align. And here's the beauty of it: the higher his standards rise, the less he fears being alone. He no longer sees solitude as emptiness, but as freedom. He would rather remain single than compromise his peace. That mindset makes him powerful because he is no longer controlled by the fear of loss. He does not cling, he does not chase, and he does not lower himself just to feel wanted. His standards keep him strong, and they ensure that when he finally does choose someone, it is from a place of clarity, not desperation. The longer a man is single, the more he defines his standards, and those standards guarantee that he will never settle for anything less than respect, alignment, and true value. The longer a man is single, the more he protects his energy. At first, many men don't even realize how easily their energy can be drained by chasing validation, by clinging to people who don't reciprocate, or by constantly trying to prove themselves in relationships that are not aligned. But when a man spends real time single, he begins to recognize the value of his time, his focus, and his emotional state. He learns that energy is his most precious resource, and once it is wasted on the wrong people, it is gone forever. This awareness transforms him. It makes him more intentional, more selective, and far less willing to invest where there is no return. Being single teaches a man that not everyone deserves access to him. In fact, he learns that his presence is not free, it is earned through respect, alignment, and mutual effort. This shift changes everything. Instead of giving himself away easily, instead of chasing after those who withhold affection or attention, he learns to step back. He begins to protect his mental peace with the same seriousness he would protect his finances or his physical health. Because once he experiences the stability that comes from guarding his energy, he realizes nothing is worth losing that peace. Masculine men especially understand this truth. When they chase, they lose power. They give too much, they sacrifice their mission, and they hand control over to someone else. But when they protect their energy, they keep control. They keep their emotions steady, they keep their mind clear, and they keep their direction intact. This is why they disappear when they sense disrespect. They know that staying would cost them more energy than it's worth. They would rather walk away than allow themselves to be drained. The longer a man remains single, the more disciplined he becomes about where his energy flows. He invested in his health, in his career, in his mission, in his growth. He pours it into activities that multiply his strength rather than diminish it. This discipline makes him sharper, stronger, and more magnetic. People begin to notice the difference because he carries himself with a presence that can only come from self-respect. And the irony is, the more he protects his energy, the more others want access to it. But by then, he has learned that not everyone qualifies. Protecting energy also means he becomes more aware of manipulation. He can recognize when someone is trying to use games, silence, or emotional bait to pull him in. But instead of falling for it, he withdraws. He knows his emotions are not toys for someone else to play with. He knows his attention is not something to be demanded through drama. Protecting his energy gives him emotional clarity, and that clarity ensures he is never controlled by anyone else's actions. He stays grounded in his own frame, unshaken by the games that drain weaker men. Over time, this habit of protecting energy becomes second nature. It no longer feels like effort, it feels like power. He no longer even entertains situations that would have once drained him because he knows they are beneath him. He values his peace too much to trade it for temporary excitement or empty validation. That kind of discipline is rare, but it is also what makes masculine men so powerful. They don't give themselves to everyone, they choose carefully. And when they choose from a place of strength, not need. The longer a man is single, the more he protects his energy, and that protection ensures that no one can drain him, distract him, or derail him from his mission. The longer a man is single, the more he becomes magnetic. At first, he may not even notice the change, but others around him will. When a man is no longer chasing, no longer desperate, no longer bending over backwards for validation, he starts to radiate a different kind of energy. His focus is on himself, on his health, his goals, his growth, his mission, and that self-focus creates a presence that naturally draws people toward him. Masculine men understand that true attraction never comes from chasing. It comes from standing firm, from being grounded, and from living with purpose. When a man is single long enough, he has the time and space to build himself. He invests in his body, sharpening his strength and discipline. He invests in his mind, gaining wisdom, knowledge, and clarity. He invests in his mission, building something meaningful that gives him direction. And all of this work compounds into a quiet confidence that others cannot ignore. People feel his presence without him needing to announce it. He becomes magnetic not because he is trying to be, but because he has built himself into someone worth noticing. This magnetism has nothing to do with arrogance. It is not about trying to show off or prove superiority. It is about alignment. A man who is aligned with his values, who respects his own time, who refuses to beg for attention, carries himself with a different aura. He doesn't need to say, "Look at me." His presence already speaks. And because he is not seeking validation, people are naturally more willing to give it. This is the paradox masculine men understand. When you stop chasing attention, it comes to you. Singlehood amplifies this effect because it teaches a man patience. Instead of forcing connections, he learns to wait. Instead of lowering his standards, he raises them. Instead of pouring his energy into someone who isn't reciprocating, he pours it into his own growth. And with each step forward, his confidence grows. Confidence is magnetic, but it is only real when it is earned through discipline and self-respect. The longer he builds himself, the stronger that magnetism becomes. There is also a different kind of attraction at play, the attraction of independence. People are drawn to those who don't need them. A man who is comfortable being single, who has built a fulfilling life on his own, exudes independence. He is not clinging, he is not needy, he is not desperate. He chooses relationships, but he does not depend on them. That independence makes him rare, and rarity is always attractive. The more time he spends single, the more he embodies this independence, and the stronger his magnetic pull becomes. And what makes this magnetism so powerful is that it doesn't fade. It isn't built on tricks or games. It is built on substance, on real growth, on real discipline, on real focus. People can sense the difference between someone pretending to be confident and someone who actually is. A man who has spent years building himself, protecting his energy, and focusing on his mission doesn't need to pretend. His confidence is lived, not acted. That authenticity is what makes others gravitate toward him without him even trying. The longer a man is single, the more he realizes he never needs to chase, because his growth, his direction, and his independence naturally draw people toward him. His magnetism is not forced, it is earned. And that magnetism ensures he attracts what aligns with him without ever having to beg for it. The longer a man is single, the more he realizes he doesn't lose by walking away. In fact, every time he chooses to step back from a situation that doesn't serve him, he gains something far more valuable: peace, clarity, and freedom. At first, this truth may not be obvious. Many men believe that leaving someone behind means failure or loss. They think that letting go makes them weaker, as if holding on is proof of strength. But the longer a man lives without relying on relationships for validation, the more he sees the opposite is true. Walking away is not losing, it is choosing. It is choosing self-respect over desperation, alignment over compromise, and freedom over chaos. When a man is single long enough, he learns that peace is priceless. He begins to notice the difference between solitude and struggle, between quiet nights alone and restless nights in relationships that steal his energy. And over time, he realizes that nothing he gains from chasing or forcing a connection is worth the cost of losing his peace. This is when he truly understands the power of disappearing, because disappearing is not running away, it is walking back into his own center where his energy, his time, and his direction belong. Walking away also sharpens his self respect. Every time a man refuses to tolerate disrespect, indifference, or games, he reinforces to himself that his value is not negotiable. He shows himself that he will never beg for love, never plead for attention, and never lower his standards just to avoid being alone. That choice strengthens him. And the longer he remains single, the more natural it becomes. He no longer struggles with guilt over leaving behind what does not align, because he knows leaving is not failure, it is growth. It is proof that he is strong enough to put himself first. Another lesson a man learns through long-term singlehood is that walking away creates space for something better. When he clings to what doesn't serve him, he blocks the door to what could elevate him. But when he steps away, he opens that door again. This doesn't mean he is constantly waiting for someone else. It means he trusts that alignment will come naturally when it is meant to. Until then, he focuses on his mission, his health, his purpose. And in that focus, he grows more powerful, more magnetic, more unshakable. This realization that nothing is truly lost by walking away makes him fearless. He no longer fears rejection because he sees it as redirection. He no longer fears being alone because he has mastered solitude. He no longer fears letting go because he knows that peace will always outweigh chaos. That fearlessness is what makes him so different from men who cling, chase, and beg. While others hold on tightly to what is slipping away, he calmly releases it, trusting that his strength lies not in holding on, but in moving forward. The longer a man is single, the more he sees this truth repeated in different forms. Every time he disappears from what doesn't align, he feels lighter. Every time he protects his energy, he feels stronger. Every time he walks away, he realizes he hasn't lost anything. He has only gained. And that mindset changes everything. It frees him from the need to chase. It protects him from manipulation. It keeps him grounded in self-respect. And it ensures that when he does choose to give his presence, it is only where it is valued. The longer a man is single, the more he realizes he never truly loses by walking away. He only gains his power back.